Psalm 91. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near you, your dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. Because He has set His love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation.
The new land is near. Yes, I tell you, the new land is but a view away. Hang tightly, for as your knuckles turn white for gripping too long, soon the blood of God will be flowing through the city. Yes, the heart is pumping and the city is awake again, bustling around, labor pains gone, nothing remembered but the sweet smell of the Lord's favor. Be joyful, be expectant, for what a season we walk into. Every tear is wiped clean, and every lash is healed fully. Yes, no more aches and pains, no more wandering in chaos. I am a righteous God, and every dog will have their day. Yes, every dog will have their day. Laughter resounds and the glory falls. Catch it or go into a great slumber, for the time will be present soon. You won't want to miss it.
Hi everyone, we're the Oliver Sisters. I'm Madison.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Taylor. And welcome to the Olive Press. We are so excited for this episode because we are going to be diving into the topic of fear. And specifically, what fear looked like in Taylor's life when we first started getting into this ministry. Now, we left off last episode really talking about finding yourself a secret place. Now, a secret place can either be a physical location or a mental location where you go to meet and have time with Jesus and ask Him the questions that are on your heart. So this can be a room or your bedroom or a prayer closet that you have that you can physically go into, or it can be in your mind where you can picture yourself going to the beach and meeting Jesus there and saying, Lord, whatever your questions are that you have for Him. So hopefully you did that with your TBC team. And today we're going to kind of tell you a little bit more of why secret places were so important to us and how they kind of led us onto this journey.
Yeah, because this all is going to lead us into Taylor's fear, because this was the very beginning of us being called into ministry. And it was about 9 years ago when the three of us started receiving the gifts of the Spirit. And we didn't quite, know exactly that they were the gifts of the Spirit at the time. But we kept getting these similar messages, all of us, through dreams, through visions, and through prophetic words. And it all had to do with these spaces that we knew were going to be healing spaces, and the Lord was showing them to us in a physical way as retreat centers.
As if we were going to build them. Like, it was our dream that this is what we wanted to do in the long run. In the long haul, we wanted to own these retreat-style venue spaces that would be for healing, for worship, and for prayer.
Yeah, and the Lord told us, call them the secret place. And, what we were experiencing in our own private prayer time when we were going to our spiritual, mental secret places in our mind, when I would go to the beach and meet with Jesus, or Taylor, she'll tell you she would go to the forest, and we would have these different secret places personally, but the Lord said, create these on a physical level so that people can have this place to retreat from the everyday world and step into an anointed space where they can encounter the Holy Spirit and hear from Him.
And the Lord really also showed us that these would be like modern day tabernacles, where the land would already be anointed with the presence of God, and that you would really be coming face to face with Him to receive His words, to listen, and to really be able to be filled with His purpose for your life.
And Taylor, tell them what the tabernacle is if someone doesn't know.
So we read in the Bible just about the tabernacle. It really carried the presence of God, and the Israelites would carry around the Ark of the Covenant, which held that presence, and they put that in the tabernacle, in the tent. And the Levitical priests would be the only ones who could go in behind the veil and go face to face with that presence on behalf of the people. But when Jesus died on that cross, they say He tore that veil, and now we all can come into that presence. So that's what the Lord was showing us when we were first having these visions of the secret place. He said, this is a modern day tabernacle. It's going to be intimate places where His presence is, and the people are going to be able to come face to face with God when they come into this anointed land.
So it's so funny looking back and just to see how much you grow personally on your own spiritual journey, because when we started out, we were thinking, we have to build these places ourselves, and this is what God has commissioned us to do.
Yeah.
And as we started to explain last episode, that's when we felt a call to move to Nashville, Tennessee. And that is
that dream.
it was in pursuit of that dream, because we had met some other people with similar type visions, and we thought, okay, the Lord's making the way, and we're going to go to Nashville and build our first secret place. And this was in 2017. So it was before that move that I had the vision that I already shared about being out, Jesus calling us on the water, the scary sea monster, and then the three animals appearing that represented our fears. And so what also I want to say before Taylor tells about the deer, which is the animal that appeared for her, is that, what we realized after our Nashville experience was that we thought, we were going to go build the secret place, and God really used that season as a training ground to teach us and grow us in our spiritual giftings for the ministry part that would be needed first. And not only that, but really He showed us these places don't so much need to always be physical. Teach people to create these secret places right in their homes, right wherever they are in their minds, to go into that secret place, because all it is, the main point of all this is to have that intimate time with God, that encounter with God on such a deep and personal level. And He's like, that's the secret place. That's the commission when He said, my name has spread to every corner of the earth, but my works have yet to catch up. Prepare the earth, create the space. It's to help people create the space wherever they are for Him.
That's right. And so when Jordan had this vision before leaving for Nashville, we were in this uncertain spot. We were, leaving the jobs that we had here, leaving our family and friends, and just following the call all in. And, fears really change throughout our lives. We all know that. They're all going to be different in different seasons. So when Jordan first had this vision of her out on the waves with Jesus, and actually all of us out on the waves, she said these three different animals appeared before her: the fox, the elephant, and the deer. And as soon as she said it, I just had that instant revelation that these represented our fears. And that's because the deer is what really stuck out to me. And I knew that represented my fear at the time. And so at that time when we're first, starting our ministry, to me, that deer just really represented the everyday person, the mundane. And I really felt like the deer. I felt like, oh, I just fit in with the rest of the crowd. There's nothing truly special about me. At this time, Madison was experiencing visions. Jordan was having dreams. And I was kind of like, okay, Lord, you don't really speak to me in this way. Like, am I just a third sister coming along for the ride? Right. Like, there's nothing, too special here. Like, how can you call me? I'm just, kind of just normal. And so that was really my fear of being in the background. And not only in the background with my gifts spiritually, but also with being next to Jordan and Madison, who are, more extroverted. All of us, we have big personalities, but next to these two, they were always more loud, more extroverted. And I just felt like maybe in my personality, I'm going to be in the background as well in the ministry. So that's what the Lord really had to work on with me before I could step out as, in leading this healing ministry or alongside you guys, is I had to be confident in who I was, and that I had to know that the Lord was calling me out as well. But I didn't know it at the time, so that's what I was coming to face.
Do you know what just came to my mind, Taylor? Is that vision that you had, and this was like a little bit. This was years after that Nashville, but it was when the Lord. Remember, we went into the kingdom, and He asked you. He said, "If you had to do this alone, like, would you?"
Oh yes.
Can you remember that?
Oh, that's yes. So
because He was speaking directly to you.
This is afterward. This was after a lot of our training and kind of conquering that in Nashville, but. Afterwards, He did give me a vision of me in the kingdom of heaven. Like He just showed me. It was like I was like back in like an old time kingdom, like in the dress. Like I had those sandals on, and I was walking through through the hallways of the kingdom, and I was going. I knew I was being called before the king. They were saying you're called to the throne room before the king, and I was looking for Madison and Jordan. I was like, where are they? And I just remember the Lord, or I guess someone came up to me and said, "This is just for you. Are you prepared to accept the position on your own? Mm-hmm. Are you prepared to speak on behalf of God for yourself and not with the help? If those two weren't here, would you be willing to do it on your own?" Mm-hmm. And yes, Jordan, that was really
wow.
Neat.
That just came.
And I remember in the vision, I said, "Yes, I'm ready to accept position," and I was ready to like burst through the doors.
Well, that was so huge because you have to understand on this journey at this time. Everything's so intertwined with the three of us because that's what the ministry God called us to. And so this was different to have that kind of experience. Right. And He was singling you out where you were going to have to step into this
right
without, on your own.
That's right. So let's rewind and go back. So when I was having the fear of the deer, the being, the one of many, the Lord started working on me. And He started saying, well, are you putting in the time? You want to receive visions, dreams? You want to hear my voice? Are you making the space to hear from me? And all I could think was, well, what if I don't hear anything when I am quiet? I remember always just like in my quiet time, just praying to God and just keeping the conversation going. Because I was like, what if, the Lord doesn't want to speak? And when I'm quiet, I don't hear anything. And that was actually probably my truest fear.
Wow. Yeah, that's a very real thing for a lot of people, I'm sure.
And a lot of people probably in the beginning won't hear, won't hear right away. And I think this is an amazing place, Jordan, for you to add just how this is a practice and a discipline.
Absolutely, yes. One thing we always explain to people when talking on this is that this is a practice. It's a discipline. And it's right in line with meditation. This is a meditative, some people call it listening prayer. It's meditative. And so it's something you have to work on. And I remember when I first started trying this really in college, someone told me, they said, you might fall asleep when you work on this because our brains are so not used to shutting off and being that focused and being able to cancel everything physically going on around us. So it takes time. And I did fall asleep in the beginning trying to get my mind quieted and into that kind of a place. And you just have to keep working at it. It's a two-way relationship, and God is no different. Our relationship with God, there is not one friend that you have, I would hope not, that you do all the talking. And there could be one that you do all the talking or they do all the talking. God is the same way. He's not a genie in a bottle that we just tell Him everything we want Him to do for us. Yes. He has a lot He's asking, He wants us to do. Well, actually, I think we're our own answer a lot of times to probably a lot of our prayers. Yes. So it's,
And to start practicing, I remember I couldn't be quiet. I mean, I wasn't quieting my mind, completely. I was just putting on music. And this is a great way to start. Put on a worship song and listen to the lyrics. Or sometimes I would just put shuffle on my iPod, and all of a sudden, it's like whatever lyrics were being said at that time or whatever message, that song, I knew it was God speaking to me. And that's how I first started identifying God's voice in my life, saying, okay, Lord, what do you want to speak to me? Speak it to me through this with a pure heart, asking Him to speak it through this song. And that's how it started.
I remember Oceans was the song God used in the beginning too, when it would randomly come on. And after that, it's always in the timing, but after we pray together or maybe have a vision or a dream or something, Oceans. Madison would even say, I woke up in the middle of the night and came into this vision, and afterwards Oceans was just playing on my Pandora.
I remember that was always a confirmation of my visions. Whenever I had a vision, it would play right after.
Yeah.
It would always play right after I had that. And we're listening to so many songs while, we're praying that always
makes sense.
It never made sense, and it was always on a random time. So
Pay attention.
That's the way God can confirm you when you're practicing meditation. Yes. So I just want to be, encourage any listener who may feel the same way. Like, I'm not receiving any of these gifts. I'm not special. I'm not set apart or called out. Mm-hmm. And say, are you making the space for God to speak to you? And don't be afraid that He won't say anything, because sometimes when we are silent, just think, I'm going to have a nice rest in this.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just nice to quiet our minds because they're so chaotic with everything that we have to do throughout the day. Just to have some quiet silence is pretty nice sometimes.
Yeah, that's very
So don't be afraid of that, I would say. So when I started creating this space, the Lord really started asking me, well, don't make your secret place the same as Jordan's or Madison's. He's like, why are you picturing the beach? Like, make it between us, like you and God, It doesn't, this is for you two. So it can be your own personality, like where you would picture meeting with Jesus, It might not be on the beach. It might be in an arcade somewhere, like, you just don't know.
Music studio.
Right. At the music studio, playing guitar together.
On the field, kicking the soccer ball.
Yeah. Anywhere you want, make it about you and make it your place.
Where you feel most comfortable and calm and at ease,
I like to add, that's the physical, or where you go into your mind, but you can also, when you're there on the soccer field, I'm just using that as an example, you can picture yourself, this is how you put yourself there, like passing the ball to God or to Jesus, and just being like, what's going on today? And just act like you're in a conversation. Start visualizing. Thank you. Start visualizing and using your imagination to get you there, because that is how things start to flow. It starts to flow when you start using your imagination.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And so it was only in this time where I created my own secret place that the Lord started showing up, started downloading. And I remember one of the first visions I had was really a vision of surrender. And surrender is the number one thing that needs to happen, because I know we have so much control all the time, and the Lord just wants us to surrender to Him and to His plan. And in the vision, He showed me, I was in my secret place, which Jordan mentioned before is the woods or the forest, and I was just in this stream. And in the vision, I just fell down in the stream on my knees before Jesus was in front of me. And as I did, I was speaking in tongues. And I thought this was neat, because at the time I did not have that gift yet.
None of us did.
I was not speaking in tongues in my prayer time. So I saw myself doing it in this vision, and I was like, wow. And as I was doing it, this light was shining down into my head as if revelation from the Lord was coming in. And so I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to start somewhere, and it's just going to be to surrender. Surrender your tongue. Open your mouth. Start speaking. Start praying in the Spirit. And as I did that, that is really when the Lord started bringing the download, bringing the revelation, and actually giving me prophecy for people. Right. And I think that's interesting, because then I was interested in reading about it in the Bible, because, that's the first place we turn to when, we're not familiar with a certain gift of the Spirit. So the best place to start, if you want to learn about any of the gifts, I would recommend would be in 1 Corinthians. And I have it open here because I wanted to read what it says here about tongues. And this is 1 Corinthians chapter 14. And it says, eagerly pursue and seek to acquire the spiritual endowments, especially that you may prophesy. For one who speaks in tongues speaks not to men, but to God. For no one understands, because in the Spirit he utters secret truths and hidden things. But the one who prophesies speaks to men for their upbuilding and for their encouragement. He who speaks in tongues edifies himself, but he who prophesies edifies the church. Now I wish that you all might speak in tongues, but more especially I wish that you were to prophesy. So I really like to look at it as when we speak in tongues, it really is our personal edification. It is that spiritual language of us speaking to God. It's just you and God. He is downloading the hidden mysteries, maybe things in your heart that you haven't heard before. He's bringing that up because it is the true will of God, the true purpose He has for you, Think about speaking to someone who doesn't speak your language. How do you have a true conversation with someone who you can't speak with?
Yeah.
So when you're in that spirit language, you're speaking God's direct language and you're understanding what he's trying to tell you.
So
And those are the hidden things that he can tell you about others.
Yes.
So I like to think of tongues is for your personal prayer time, or with a small group, you're practicing and you're edifying yourself and you're building yourself up, receiving the hidden divine revelation from the heavens. And then when you're with other people, you are then able to release that and pour out the messages, the revelations, the hidden things, because then that is prophecy. Prophecy is to build up the church. It is the perfect will of God, and speaking out the perfect will of God over someone for the building up of the kingdom.
Yes.
And I remember as you were getting into these gifts, you started interpreting my visions.
Oh,
And I think that's a really awesome story. So this is cool how the Lord, he waited for me first to be confident. Like I said, putting in my own time, making me confident. And then I was blessed with the spiritual gifts. And once that happened, then he connected us in our spiritual gifts. And
so cool.
that was the coolest part of it.
That is so cool. Think of it like that.
An example of this was one time Taylor and I were worshiping together, and we just put on our music, and then we would sometimes pray out loud and then have some quiet time. So to see if we would hear anything. And it was usually during that quiet time that I would have a vision. And so one time I was just closing my eyes and say, Lord, what do you want to speak to me today? And I saw the outlines of our bodies, of the three of our bodies. And the Lord had a watering pot, and he was kind of pouring this liquid gold into the outlines of the bodies. And it was overflowing, coming over my head, over the outline of the head. And then all of a sudden, these mean, scary dogs came out of nowhere, and they weren't biting us, but they came up and they were licking the gold off of us. And I was like, I knew that was wrong. I was like, oh, that's not right. And then when I looked over, I saw the dogs puking up the gold as if they couldn't handle it. And they were throwing it up over there. And I was like, that's so interesting. So I am having that vision. And literally, she's not saying that out loud. So when she's having it, it's quiet. And she's just shutting her eyes. And I'm just, across from her worshiping and shutting my eyes. And right when I'm done, Taylor starts praying out loud. So I'm praying out loud without knowing anything she saw. And at that time is when we were really pursuing our dream of building these secret places. And, we were working on our business plans, and, we were in school for business. So we were learning how to do all of that. And at the time my prayer, I just prayed out loud and I said, Lord, I just ask that you just fill us up with your spirit alone, God, so that we are overflowing with you, and that anyone who comes on our path, God, any businessman or woman who may be trying to take advantage of us or any way, Lord, would you just protect us and put the armor around us so that we are not, I don't want to say harmed, but,
to keep us protected.
Yeah, but don't let any of them take away from what we're doing, and just give us divine discernment, I guess, on who to deal with in the matters. I could have screamed. I was like, I literally just saw that symbolically, Taylor, and you just prayed it out loud back to me. And that's how I knew. We knew it was God. It was none of us, because he literally gave us the exact same message at the exact same time.
Yeah, right. No.
It was unbelievable. Like, that was so cool. And then, and then you started telling, like, every time I would have a vision, I was either getting something in the Bible or read the Bible. And this is the main way, really, to make sure that, you're hearing from the voice of God, obviously, is to be in the Word of God and to hear how he spoke to everyone throughout the Bible. And it's just the craziest thing, because Madison's visions were very symbolic in the beginning, and we would not know what they meant. But as I was reading the books of Ezekiel, Daniel, the prophets, pretty much, they had very similar symbolic or symbolism in their visions. So I would say, Madison, you have to read this. I'm just reading this in Ezekiel, and he saw the same thing that you did. And maybe what God's speaking to Ezekiel here, he's trying to speak to you. It's the same message for you now in a different way, but for your life here.
Yes.
And this is why they call it the living word. Because although our life may look different, all our circumstances are still the same, and God still speaks the same in those circumstances. As he did back then, he does now. So this is why we wanted to read the Bible. It's like we were experiencing what was in there. I said, what?
It was exciting.
It was exciting. It made it so exciting. We said, oh my gosh, we're experiencing these same things. And this is how you can discern what is of God's voice and what it might not be of God's voice. If you're reading your Bible and you kind of get the flow of how he speaks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he spoke that exactly to Ezekiel. Now he's speaking it to me. Okay, I know this is God. I'm on the right track.
We always say, it's not as important to memorize scripture. I think a lot of people get intimidated from the Bible just thinking, I can't remember this. I don't know the history. I don't know the facts, or I can't memorize. All that matters is reading it and just knowing, being familiar with the stories and the way that God moved, the way that God spoke, the patterns. That's what's important, so that in your own life, you can resonate with that, and you live it, and you can live it exactly, and that's so really, that's really what it's all about.
Wow. And I wanted to say, because you were saying that finally, when you surrendered, you received the gifts.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And I just wanted to bring a quote from Drafted that was so good, because it kind of goes with all of this. As we were chasing our dream, needing to surrender, this is just a quote from Drafted that said, often the surrender isn't necessary to accomplish the dream. The dream is necessary to accomplish the surrender. I just think that's a really awesome quote, because most of the time, God's ways are not our ways, sadly. We think they are. I wrote in my journal, I was reading out of my journal, and it was the best line. I said, I know that my plans for my life are exactly what God's plans for my life are. It was the best thing. If only I could have seen now. It's nothing like what was coming for you. What was coming for me. He was laughing at me then. But it is just so
well,
funny.
And it was to a degree, like at that time, the things, but it is so comical.
But the best part about that quote is that dream, our dream of building the actual venue, is the only thing that made us go. Really, God used that dream to get us to walk through the hard parts of the journey, the true parts of the journey that he needed us to walk through, to really learn how to trust in him, to really learn the truest meaning of surrender, sacrifice,
dying to self, sacrifice, all the things that we read about, right here in the Bible, but you have no idea until we walk through it. So now to bring this all kind of back full circle to the deer, many people, we always tell Taylor, she always thinks that her testimony of this deer symbolism and not feeling like she had anything, or, not the gift, not having a specific gift, she always says that she doesn't think that that's that valuable. And honestly, we always say, we think 99% of people, if not, maybe not that much, but most people probably feel that way. That they don't know, they don't think they're worthy to be used by God, which I don't know why that would be, when God used prostitutes, murderers, tax collectors, all of the outcasts of society, and the least likely.
Right.
Because his strength is shown through weakness. So, basically, I think most people are just wondering where their purpose is and how could God possibly use them. And, one of the places that we have to start when we're trying to build that confidence in ourselves and, really try to, because I really think that's what it boils down to, is having confidence in yourself, is looking at scripture when Jesus was talking to some Pharisees and they asked him, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, the first one is to love God above anyone and with your whole heart and mind. But there's a second commandment, and he says that it's really the greatest of all. And if we grow up Christian, for anyone who grew up Christian, we all grow up learning the golden rule. Love others as you love yourself. But one day I was reading that, and the Lord was really showing me that we've kind of been getting that all wrong. That there's actually an order to love that he gives. And it's not God, others, self. It's God, self, and then others. And this goes back to being on an airplane when they say, parents, please put your own oxygen mask on before your child's.
Right.
How can we possibly love others as we love ourselves? That means you have to love others with the same kind of love that you have for yourself. So how are you going to do that if you don't know what that kind of love looks like?
If you don't love yourself first.
You're not. It's physically impossible. Right. So we have to love ourselves first. And one day I asked God, what is love? What is the true definition of love? This is the most powerful force in the universe, regardless of your faith, regardless of gender, age. Love is, what binds us all, really. And I truly believe he gave me the definition of love. He said, to love is to continuously seek the best in someone.
Yeah.
Or even something. It could
So
even be
good.
in a circumstance. And the key word is to continuously. So that's why we say you don't have to like someone to love them. Because you don't have to like someone and hang out with them all the time to believe that a better version of themselves can be brought forward. To believe that they could be a little bit better if they try.
Just think of a parent with their kid. No matter what the kid does, the parent is still going to love them because they know the kid can be better. They may have made a poor choice. They may have made a bad decision, but they know that's not the fullest potential that he or she had, that she can be more, she can be better. And it's that unconditional love, but it's continually seeing the best in someone else.
Yes.
Not even just seeing the best in someone else.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and that's what God does. As our Father, as our ultimate parent, God, he knows, he's the one who made us. So he knows what we were made for. He knows the purpose you have, and he knows that you can fulfill it. That no matter how far back you've gotten, how far you've strayed, it is possible for, as long as you're still on this earth and you have breath in your lungs, it's possible for you to attain your purpose and to accomplish what you were meant to do on this earth.
And I really always thought about it, like, if we're all created in the image of God, and we all are a piece of God that nobody else can be, we're each individual pieces of God. I always think it's kind of like we're not loving God. Like, if I don't love this part of me, then I'm not loving a piece of God that he only gave to me.
Wow.
So I always think about it that way, like how upset he would be to be like, how do you not love what I only gave you and nobody else?
Yeah,
and
I
that's
love
a piece
that.
of me.
That is so awesome. And
if you're not loving yourself, you're not loving God. That's that order again. God, because we're made in his image, God, us, then others. But really, it's if you're not loving yourself, you're not loving God, because he's the one who created us.
That is so true. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And you know what I just thought of? One of the biggest, in drafted, I refer to it as dead end territory. The girls always laugh about that.
We love that line.
Dead end territory is comparison.
Oh.
And this is one of the biggest robbers of
Our
love of self and confidence and blocks us. And it truly is dead end territory because it's going to get you nowhere. You are the only you that there is on this earth. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
And the twin thing?
Yes.
Okay, here's the analogy that we like to use for that. These two are identical twins. Scientifically, genetically, physically, they have the exact same DNA makeup. Exact same. They were one egg that literally split in half. So you get the same. But they are completely different people. How do you explain that? Completely different personalities and, just in a bunch of different ways they're different. And so when you look at that, that to me is God's handprint on these individual lives. It's the spirit within them that makes them different and unique. And that is what all of us have. And, this is why scripture says that the body, the church body is like a physical body. That an eye cannot do the job of a hand. That the mouth cannot do the job of the ear. That the head, the brain can't do the job of the foot. We each have to function in our lane, using the gifts God has given us, the personalities God has given us, be the person God has made you to be in order so that the whole body can function as one and properly and healthily.
I always say, what if the eyes said, oh, I wish I were the hands. I wish I were the ears. Then we couldn't see. The body wouldn't be able to see. We wouldn't be able to walk. Right? If we're not using the individual gifts that we each have, we are not going to ever fulfill our kingdom purpose. And we need everyone. And we need everyone's individual gifts. That's right. You're over here pointing at your celebrity idol or your celebrity crush thinking, oh, I want so badly what they have. when really you are the only you, and only you can do what you were put on this earth to do.
They can't do it.
They're never going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to fulfill your purpose. So that you actually have something that they don't have. So you don't have to be comparing yourself to the popular girl at school or to the jock on the team. There's no comparison, because instead of looking at someone and wishing that you had their life, God is looking at you and saying, oh, whoa, I put you here for this, and I need you to do this.
That is so perfect. That is so perfect, because that reminds me of the image that I always have in my mind, speaking of fears, of what would be my biggest fear. And that is when I die, this is what I envision if I'm afraid to do something, or I don't feel worthy of doing something, or like, too afraid. Then I envision being in front of Jesus at the end of my life, which the Bible tells us that we will all stand before God at the end of our life, for judgment. And I picture myself standing there, and what scares me is not picturing him showing me the things I did wrong. It's him showing me the life that I could have had if I trusted him and followed what he told me to do.
Yeah.
That would be probably the worst possible thing, because he has, greater, the famous Ephesians 3:20 verse, greater things than we can ask for or imagine. Wow. And what are we, when we just get, sidetracked and look at other people's lives and are sitting there on the couch scrolling on our phones all day and comparing ourselves to others, what kind of life is that?
What kind of life is that?
And
he's going to be standing before you, and you're going to be saying, oh, I was not worthy to go out and do this. And he's going to say, oh, you are worthy. You had that spirit of God within yourself. You are too afraid, which brings it all back to fear. You are too afraid to step out and go do something that may have been out of your comfort zone. Audition for American Idol when you're saying, oh, everyone else is so much better than me.
Yeah.
Or not go off of that soccer team because you're afraid to try out. My famous line is, you're already not on the team, so the worst you're going to be is not on the team. You're already not on American Idol, so the worst you're going to be is not on American Idol. You might as well go live life. We always say, we have one life to live.
Yeah.
So it's time to get off the couch, to get off your phone, put it down, and go do what you want to do.
Yes.
Because this spirit, it gives us confidence. And this is what we love to talk about. And I love how it's not even, you don't have to even have that pride in yourself. People say, oh, I can't go, pray for healing over someone because that means I'm healing them. Right. And I say, no, literally Jesus tells us I am dying so that I can send my spirit, the helper, to live within all who believe, so that you guys will do greater works than I did here.
Yes.
So you are to go out and do that. So when we're laying and we're praying for healing, it's not us doing the healing. I always say, no. We're vessels of Jesus' spirit, and it's God's spirit working at work within us and doing the work. So there's nothing to be boastful or prideful in, but it's expected of us. And that's our amazing lesson from Big Sis over here. Oh. I'll never forget it when she said, that when we were doing our business plan, and I wanted to go up to one of my professors at school and ask him about it, but it felt really embarrassing. This is so nerdy. This guy was high up in a company before, and you were thinking, I don't want to bring in my business plan. This might not even make sense. You're all nervous, kind of. And Jordan said,
intimidated.
Madison, we all carry the same spirit. And you do not have to feel inferior or superior to anyone, because that same spirit connects us all. And
when we're dealing with like-minded, with people, because we know that Satan has his army too. But when you're dealing with God's army, which we knew he was, then that is true. That is true.
And it's really about the confidence that you get when you just know that, when you know that spirit is in you, and you're thinking, okay, well, guess what? This is going to give me the confidence to go and live this life and do what I want to do.
Yes.
And no one can stop me. And you realize more often than not, nobody cares.
Oh, nobody cares.
You're always worried about, guess what? No one knew that day. No one knew that day that I went up there and asked them about my business plan and got amazing advice and a great mentor while at it. And you know what I was doing, or if the business plan was correct or not. No one knew. No one knew. And guess what? That gave him purpose as well. What we don't understand is that as much as we're nervous or we're feeling, when we ask advice from others, we are then giving the other person purpose in pouring out their gifts to us.
Yes.
And so that's a greater
Yes.
blessing. It goes all around. The God works both ways. You know, you were being filled, but
Yes.
he was able to pour out then everything that he had stored up in him. And
Right.
I would say that's a blessing
Totally.
for us to be able to give back, you know, to be able to give back what everything that we have. That's the point.
That is so big. That is so true.
You know, what I was thinking about was really a lot of the times our biggest weakness is actually Satan's way of covering up our greatest strength. And kind of going back to that deer of me always being a part of the crowd or, you know, blending in, really allowed me, I realized as I look back over my life, I was always in big groups of people, and I always was really great with, you know, just being one-on-one with people, and people would say, oh, I feel like I've known you my whole life, and maybe they would share things with me that they couldn't share with others. And I started to realize, oh, my quietness or, you know, my ability to blend in is actually one of my greatest strengths and one way that God really uses me to help speak into others' lives. So once I realized that, then I could use that to my greatest advantage.
Yes.
So really, I think for our triple braided cord challenge for this week, we want you to focus on this with your group. Talk about what you think is maybe one of your greatest weaknesses and how Satan might be covering up one of your greatest strengths.
Love that. Love that.
And Jordan, did you want to end with reading the poem that you wrote?
Yes. So sometimes, most of the time, we've ended our episodes with a prayer, but today we're going to end with a poem because that's one of the ways, one of my gifts is writing and poetry. And I believe that, you know, the Holy Spirit, he kind of downloads revelation to me as I write these poems. And I wrote this poem called The Deer, and it was right around the time that I received this vision and that God was really giving us revelation on what it all meant. So I wrote this poem for Taylor, and it's called The Deer, and I hope maybe it can help you, it can lead you into this triple braided cord challenge in thinking about your weakness and strength. Jesus one day asked me to walk out on the waves, and then to go back to the shore and speak so lives could change. I couldn't help but answer. I ran to meet him there. Walking on the waves is first, and then you'll go and share. Before I left his presence, though, there walked out on the sea a deer as plain as day itself. I knew he'd come for me. Watch out for the deer, he said, the day God made this beast. They seem to linger all around, common plain the least. They look the same, simple and plain, yet that's what makes them fierce. Blending in a world of sin, then one day norm they pierce. At first they walk in roam and field, innocent and calm. But when they jump an open road, disruption they will cause. My darling, you are just the deer first roaming in the field, blending in a world of sin, then forcing sin to yield. You think you're plain and common sane, yet that they must think first. For no one listens to the voice of foreign sound, a curse. My darling, you are just the deer, your meekness draws them close, enticing sin with quiet hymn as God draws out his bow. You are the deer, your greatest fear, yet this fear's holy too. For if it's fear of me alone, fear's what I'll make of you.
Wow.
So,
Awesome.
fear's what God will make of us when we allow him in, when we surrender, as Taylor talked about, and when we do choose to shift our perspective and say, you know what, maybe this fear that I have is just the thing that Satan is, that he's most afraid of.
Thanks, guys, for joining us for another episode of the Olive Press. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Triple Braided Cord, and you can also email us any of your testimonies, your healing stories, or questions that you may have at info@braidedcord.org. All right, guys, have a great one.
Keep your lamp burning.